This is the White Cloud Mystic Podcast. I am your host, Nicole, and welcome back to another episode. In this episode, I am going to be talking about how to see yourself as the unique individual that you are and embrace that self. Having the ability to meet someone at their surface level self, the self that they are portraying to you, and to go underneath that is an amazing gift that you can give somebody in a moment of interaction. To see somebody for who they are in that moment, to validate them in their experience, and to see their hidden parts, sometimes is the most loving thing a person can do for someone else. So how do we go about going underneath the surface level of somebody or the surface level of ourselves? I'm going to approach this conversation as if you were talking to someone else. But you can turn this lens completely in on yourself. And I would encourage you to do this, kind of experience yourself from a third person perspective sometime. So in either way, you would be using this technique from the outside looking in. First off, when people communicate, most of the time, what they are communicating about is actually a symptom of what they are experiencing in their inner world. They are either wrestling with a worry, they're trying on a new paradigm. They are checking to see if their belief systems match up still. They are doing this inner work. They're checking to see if things are still valid. The surface level conversation may have almost nothing to do with what they are actually mulling over inside. So let's do an example. Say you have a friend who has just gone to yoga for like the first time ever. And maybe you yourself do yoga, maybe you don't. Doesn't really matter. The person just went. And they are telling you about it. And they are talking about this space. They're saying maybe it was too crowded. It was, the instructor went too fast. They were too loud. The music was too loud. They're expressing that they had a really negative time. And they're saying that the negative time had everything to do with the yoga studio itself and the instructor. So that's the surface conversation. What they are really working through on the inside, though, is the problem. That surface conversation is the symptom. The inner thing is the problem. Let's say that in that moment, they felt very insecure, so we could go deeper. They felt insecure and they felt like they didn't belong. These are deeper issues, things that they're working through deep inside. So that's kind of the current problem that they're working with. So we've got like 2 levels so far. We have the top level, which is the symptom. We have the inner level, which is the problem, the thing that they're really like churning through. And this gets more interesting here in a moment. That might be more obvious to you, that one. But I'm suggesting that we go even further in. So now that we're in to that problem area, and we'll stick with our yoga example specifically, so they don't feel like they fit. And this could be due to fitness. This could be to education level. This could be to maybe they grew up with traditional values and yogic practices are a little bit out there for them. This could also be social anxiety, not feeling comfortable around other people. It could be a slew of different inner problems that they're wrestling with. So of these ones, let's say we'll choose, for sake of this style of podcast, let's say they grew up with really traditional views. And this is where we're going deeper. Let's say they grew up with really traditional views. They grew up in a more strict religion, and that could be any structured religion, or even any structured household that really holds firm to values that are like, this is what normal is, and this is what, woo-woo is, or this is what is foreign, and foreign is unacceptable. So there are households like that aren't even religious, but they are very traditional in that sense. So let's say that's an inner dialogue that's a little bit deeper even. But this person, in particular, our example person, is exploring yoga. They have a call, they have a curiosity about it, which is because deep down, deeper than level 2, is they have something about themselves that is attracted to new ways of perceiving the world. They have something about themselves that wants to experience unity and broader views. They have that part of themselves in there. And that is the beautiful part. The part that when I interact with people, that's the part that I find. That part in there. It's like down to the 3rd level. When you find this space, you could talk to it. You could name it, like I just labeled it. You could label it with words, and you could put a concept around it. If you are a person who has developed the ability to sense energy, or has explored different energetic patterns within yourself, you can match this aspect of a person and feel the energy of it. You can embrace them by experiencing that part of them and letting it blossom within yourself. You can interact with that person in a way that, without necessarily calling it out directly, but you could speak to that part of them and encourage it because it is true to them. It is real. It is part of them that they're desiring to grow. But there are these layers of restriction that is holding them back. So as people are battling with this 2nd level, they are always deciding, should I keep it? Should I get rid of it? What do I do with this problem? Their surface conversation is always going to be reflecting that 2nd level problem. The topic of interest will change depending on who they're talking about, what they're learning about, what they're watching. That part will always change. But the surface conversation is always reflecting this inner 2nd level. Unless there is a caveat. Unless they have released those restrictions and they're actually able to communicate from the good stuff, level 3, something that they have completely embraced within themselves, something that they have decided is true, that they value, that they want to share with the world from. So you'll meet people like that where they are just brimming with something, this extra something. And they are flowing out of this pure energetic part of themselves that is completely unrestricted. And that is really attractive. It's magnetic. So you'll either be interacting with someone from that space, like experiencing that from someone, or you'll be experiencing them on the surface level where they are just wrestling over their limitations. So now the question is, how do we break through or rid ourselves of the limitations and fears of level 2? So you have to understand the fears and restrictions, pretty much everything at this level 2, these things were written, in our past. And they were written to protect us from something. So let's say, in our example, our new friend, the yogi, our friend has this fear or mistrust around things that are not traditional. That's a little program that our friend wrote into themselves. This program could have been written for all sorts of reasons. This could be, let's say in our example, maybe when our friend, our new yogi, our friend, was a kid, maybe there were, on the news, when they were really little, there was a lot of content about war and the fear around war. And maybe our friend's parents had a lot of fear, and they believed in that moment of their lives that things that were foreign were the enemy and scary. Maybe the mom or dad got really upset about this news story, and maybe they were yelling about like these other countries, that could have been it. So the child wrote within themselves, I need to protect myself from this thing that my parents think is scary and bad. So you could super sleuth, you could go down and you could dig around in that way. And it can be enjoyable to do that if you're kind of a detail-oriented person or you just like digging. There are definitely some personalities that really enjoy that process. Another method is you don't have to go digging. You could just say to yourself, I want to delete that. You could realize that, for our friend, let's say our friend is experiencing this distrust or fear over things that are non-traditional. They could realize exactly that, like, oh, I have a weird fear about things that are untraditional. And then with confidence and strength, they could say, I'm going to be done with that. I delete that. I'm done with that. We have the ability to command and change our programs, those things that whirl around in us. And I talk about this a lot in my episode about the mind. So you could listen to that episode to really key in on this process. You destroy, you uncreate that worry, that fear, that program. You just delete it. And again, I talk about that more in that episode. So that's another way, and that's a much faster way that you can do it. Both work. Those are two that I have personally worked with, and I have seen others work with. You may find your own method. You could do something with people who work in magic and in paths of magic. You could do a ritual around this, and that would be the same process. You have your intention to delete this thing, to destroy and uncreate this block, and you do it. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about if you are a person who has experienced a severe trauma, a severe childhood trauma or adulthood trauma. Severe traumas affect us on so many levels, and they are truly an atrocity on people's ability to be who they are. And a way that you may never have thought about trauma and the effects of trauma are exactly in this process. So let's say, for example, a person has a part of themselves. This is like pre-trauma. Pre-whatever trauma happened to a person. They have an aspect to themselves, an energy, this beautiful energy within them. Let's say that this energy is naturally kind of powerful, it's sensual, it's creative, and it's vibrant. And maybe it's attracted to like decay or things in nature that are like the darker aspects. They're just like, maybe there's this part of them, this amazing part that's just so interesting. And in the outer world, people create from this space all the time. They create like amazing music or art, depending. Like, you can make such amazing things from this, what could be perceived as like this dark place. But when it's in its pure form, it's another beautiful thing about someone. It's this amazing energy that people could have. So let's say someone has that, but then they experience a trauma, a horrific trauma to some degree. And now they believe that this beautiful part of themselves, this darkness, this, really cool, sensual energy is shameful, and they feel guilty about it. And that's tied to their limitations now. So now they perceive this part of themselves, which is very natural, very pure, very clean. Now they perceive it as bad and dirty and caused by a trauma. So that's almost like this double limitation process happening for anybody who has experienced a trauma. I would ask you to allow yourself to separate from that trauma, to imagine yourself as just your energy, the energy you've always been, the energy you came into this world with before the trauma, and to separate yourself, because there may be a part of you underneath that trauma that is not shameful, that you don't need to feel guilty about, but the energy itself feels similar to the trauma, or you've associated it with the trauma. You can do the same process of kind of looking at it, doing it logically, breaking it down until you can feel and experience the beauty of your energy. You could do the destroy and uncreate command. You could do a ritual. Or for you, it might be good to do that work with a counselor or a friend or someone you can trust who will allow you to explore that without judgment. We carry so much judgment already, and then on top of that, you add a situation that is socially unacceptable. We can confuse so much of what we naturally are with that situation that it's just hard to embrace ourselves the way that we could. So for those of you who have experienced trauma, I believe that potentially some of the scars that you are still carrying potentially could be being carried because there's part of you that wants to be expressed, part of you that was always there before the trauma. And I would encourage you at your own pace, or never if you're not comfortable, but at a pace that is comfortable for you, to explore it, because every part of us wants to be expressed. Every part of us can shine out and be a gift to this world. If you are a person who would like to interact with people, to help people see themselves for the amazing, beautiful things that they have underneath all those restrictions, there are some things that you need to be aware of, some important things. First off, sometimes people will never leave the surface. They don't want to go to level 2. They don't even want to go there. Sometimes level 2 is just too scary for them, and that's okay. The people who want to stay on the surface, they're living a life that is just fine. Their life experience is their own. We all have choices here. We all have free will, and it is in their free will choice to live 100% on the surface. And they may never go under to explore these things that they are battling unknowingly. And it is not our job to take them there. Sometimes in a conversation, it will naturally go there. If you have the presence where people can find space to start to reflect and calm down and slow down their symptomatic conversation on the surface, then sometimes just your presence allows them the space and calm to reflect a little bit. Or in the case where people are comfortable with going to level 2, they will use your space and your presence to go to level 2 more easily, which is a very vulnerable state. Level 2 is where we keep all of our fears. It's where we keep all of our limitations, everything that our worries, our negativity, everything is there at that level 2. So if someone is brave enough to go there with you, I would encourage you to realize that it is an act of courage and that it is an act of trust that they are able to do that with you, and that it is your responsibility to treat them with gentleness while they are exploring that space. That is where people are communicating directly with past traumas. They're dealing directly with childhood experiences that have formed them and that they have carried and assumed are important their whole lives. They have made countless decisions from these limitations and problems. Sometimes because they have made so many decisions from a certain problem or limitation, they have created an identity around it, and they hold it with value. They say, well, this is the way I am because of this trauma or experience, this problem. And I have made all my life decisions based on this. As soon as they start to question the fact that it could be different, it does two things. One, it says it takes away the validity of their current identity. So it strips them of their identity. And then it also opens the door to question past decisions they have made. And it brings up another question of, why did they not break through that limitation earlier? To this, I would say, hey, don't worry. To whoever is dealing with that moment, that is like a key moment, lots of emotions, lots of feelings, and it's okay. We are all evolving at our own pace. And that moment of realization, it's like standing at the edge of a cliff face, wondering if they're going to fall and just like break themselves, or if they're going to be fine. And I would encourage them, or you, if you're in that position yourself, to realize that underneath your fears, underneath your limitations, these things that you've held so tightly as parts of your story, or like the structural part of the character, underneath that is level 3, where the really cool stuff is. So it could be a full spectrum. You're going to find in there every pure, you would find in there every pure aspect available to yourself. So you're going to have the really bright and shiny. You're going to have the really dark and powerful and mysterious and sensual things too. They're all down there, but they're in their pure form. They have no limitations. So when you, if able to get off that cliff face yourself, or to stand there with someone, encouraging them, once you get underneath that, there is something amazing there, this energy that is now free to be expressed through you, right about you, without being restricted at all or limited at all. Being a part of this process with yourself is one of the most amazing things you can experience. The sensation of hitting this wall of restrictions and limitations and fears and everything that you feel stuck with in life. You hit this wall, and then to break through it and to see what's down there and to experience it, it is just one of the most fulfilling things you could experience within yourself. And in turn, being able to be with somebody else and be a part of that process of seeing them underneath the limitations, truly seeing them, sensing their energy, the pureness in there that is completely unique to them, and watching that blossom, or watching them see it for the first time, or the second time, or third time, just allowing that validation to happen is another one of the most amazing things you could experience. At least that's on my experience there. That is one of the most amazing things I enjoy personally. So this is probably quite enough for you to ruminate over. You are free to send questions about anything that I talk about. You can email me your questions, and I would love to do an episode to go deeper on anything that I talk about. In these episodes, I try to be efficient and give you a good amount that you can work with without I try not to go too far. I want to just give you a good chunk that you can chew on. So if you want to go deeper and you'd like me to assist you with that, go ahead and email me your question. And I'm sure many other people have that same question. And so it would benefit a lot of people. So I would definitely encourage you to email me. And my email is whitecloudmystic@gmail.com, and that's listed down below. I do offer this process. I do personal coaching with people. This is part of the processes that just naturally happen with my coaching. And then from there, we can work together to see where your energy would like to go, how you'd like to create from this space. You can find more information about working with me at my website, and that is whitecloudmystic.com. That is also linked below. If you enjoy the content and you would like to show your support or to have more content, you can find me on Patreon. Depending on what tier you are in, we'll do a monthly group chat, video chat, where you can send your questions to me and I can interact with you that way in a group. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking about the process of awakening to our consciousness, our higher consciousness level, and interacting with our friends and our families during that process. Like when the first awakening happens, when we're really just starting to explore and we're just not quite sure what's going on. So that's what the next episode will be about. Thank you so much for listening. I am so excited you're here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.